Hello, today we are showing you how to set up the pipe bridge with a telescopic axle. These instructions also work for the standard axle, just disregard the steps of extending and retracting the axle. Once out of the farm, you can pull the pipe bridge down the road to your setup location. To begin the setup process, hit the extend button on the wireless remote. You want to be moving when you extend the axles so the tires are rolling as they slide out. As you get close to the setup location, pull off the road to keep one lane of traffic clear. Next, grab the cones and set them across the road to have the road closed off during setup. Here, you will undo the towing straps that were used to keep the unit stable for towing. From there, switch the flashing lights on. The work lights can also be turned on as needed, but do not leave them on for extended periods of time. They will drain the battery overnight. Now, set the unit perpendicular to the road. If one side of the road doesn't allow you to drive in as shown here, you can jackknife the road and get it set up with the rear axle set in the ditch. You want to set the rear axle where it will stay the entire time. As you can see in this photo, the setup is less than ideal, but in cases where the ditches and power lines do not allow, the pipe bridge can be set up without the legs in their full vertical position. This needs to be done at the user and road authority discretion about keeping the tires this close to the roadway. Back to this setup, we are about 6 to 8 feet off the edge of the roadway. You will next be setting the rear parking brakes with the hydraulic hand pump. We added an accumulator on the rear brakes. That helps to keep the pressure stable so it doesn't float around as much from morning to afternoon with varying temperatures. You want to set that to 1500 psi. Lower the front leg by pressing the raise button. That takes the weight off the hitch to allow you to pull the hitch pin out. As soon as the UTV is out of the way, the pipe bridge is ready to raise up. Make sure the pendulum for the tilt is within reason, within the arrows in the back. When you raise it up, you want to keep the front slightly higher than the rear. The front does rise faster than the rear. With the rear being in a lower ditch on this setup, we actually had to stop the front and raise only the rear to get it back up close to level. Then hit both the front and rear raise again. We do have 3-phase power running on this road. Watch to make sure you don't get too close to those and stay the OSHA recommended clearances to power lines. Once it is raised to the position you want the legs, lock the front brake. Then, go back and raise the transport post up into the storage position. Go around back and level it up. We had just a little bit of a tilt here, So undo the ratchet jack lock nut, loosening the lever up a little to get the lock pin clean out. Put the transport lock pin in the storage hole. Now you can turn the ratchet jack to get it leveled up and exactly centered. You don't want to send manure through 20 feet in the air without the unit perfectly level to keep the unit balanced. There, the tilt indicator says it's straight up and down, so we'll tighten the lock nut back up. Next, check the height indicator. You can see the puck dropping down at the top of the screen from the center of the unit. The rope is 16 feet long. As long as the puck does not touch the roadway when it's all the way down, we are higher than 16 feet. You can see in this setup, it looks like we are about 1.5 feet off the roadway, so we'll actually have roughly 17.5 feet clearance under this unit. Raise the height indicator back up. Now, we can set up the traffic cones in position for when the pipe bridge is in use. The traffic cone should be set up in what they call a shoulder taper. The taper is for if anyone happens to get off the road while approaching the unit. The reflective bands on the orange cones will alert their attention to guide them back onto the roadway. Setting the cones at an angle creates the taper. This concludes setup of the pipe bridge. The manure hoses can now be attached and the pumps turned on. We will now go directly into taking the pipe bridge down. You can see the shoulder work sign completely visible. We had the sign set up prior to leaving the farm with the pipe bridge. In most cases, they are supposed to be set up 500 feet before the unit for the approaching lane of traffic. Those rules do vary depending on the speed of the road, but for most backcountry roads, 500 feet before the approaching lane is going to be the correct distance. Here, the pipe bridge is back out of level a little bit to align the tilt lock pin hole to prepare for lowering. The tilt lock pin has to be in place for setup and teardown. Here, we stuck the lock pin in, or tightening the lock jack, ratcheting the jack up, and locking the lock nut to keep the ratchet jack tight against the tilt lock pin. There we should have lowered the rear transport post, but we'll be doing that in a little bit after we realize the mistake. Now we released the front parking brake and are going to start lowering the unit down. There we realized the transport post was not up, so we'll raise that now to finish lowering the unit down. Again, you want to keep the front slightly higher than the rear. We do have a needle valve on the front cylinder to slow it down and keep the speed roughly equal to or slightly slower than the rear coming down. Go ahead and hook the UTV back up to the pipe bridge. Once it's connected, hit the front lower button to get the front leg into transport position. With the tire off the road, release the rear parking brakes, and now it is ready to pull off the road. Here's a good view from the back. You can see the axle telescoped out completely. In this position, it is 14 feet wide. Here, start retracting the axle as you're slowly driving forward and bring it back down to 8 foot 6 inches wide. Raising and lowering the unit is all done with a wireless remote. Now you can see the axles are fully retracted down to 8 foot 6 inches. Go back to grab the traffic cones and put them in their storage spot by the front leg. Attach the towing straps to stabilize the unit so it trails good behind you going to the next job. After the straps are tight, go ahead and pick up the shoulder work signs and put them in their stowed position on the rear leg. Don't forget to grease the swivels every time after you lower the unit. The swivels have standard drag hose shug seals so that the seals can seep a little when you charge a line under low pressure. We want to grease them to make sure we push any liquid that may have gotten past the seal back into the pipe and keep manure out of the swivel. Thank you.